Russia crossed a line the world never thought they would dare to approach, striking at the very core of American power, and they paid for it in blood and fire. April 15, 2025, in a single, bone-chilling instant, $1 billion B-2, Spirit stealth bomber, the pride of the U.S. Air Force and the crown jewel of American air supremacy, was obliterated by a Russian missile screaming through the upper atmosphere at Mach 14. It was the first time in history a B-2 had ever been shot down. The event ripped through Washington like a lightning bolt, sending shockwaves into NATO war rooms and rattling every major capital around the globe. But the real shock wasn't the loss, it was what came next. Within mere hours, the United States unleashed a counterattack unlike anything witnessed in modern warfare: 8 stealth bombers, 30 ballistic missiles, a carrier strike group, bristling with hundreds of Tomahawk missiles. The night sky over Russia turned into a storm of steel and fire. Across the Russian military, alarms screamed. Thousands of soldiers scrambled into defensive positions, many never even glimpsing the attack before the detonations came. This was not just retaliation, it was a thunderous reminder to every nation of what happens when the American giant is wounded. Morning of April 15th, the unthinkable. For the first time, a U.S. B-2 Spirit, a ghost in the sky for decades, fell to enemy fire. Its destruction was no accident. Russia had unleashed its newest anti-air crown jewel, the S-500 Promety, engineered with one mission in mind: to hunt and destroy stealth aircraft and hypersonic threats. It stood as a direct challenge to the myth of American invisibility. The B-2, flying at 50,000 feet along the Belarus border, relied on its radar-absorbing skin and jagged, light-bending edges to remain unseen. But Russian radar crews were not amateurs. Using the S-500's cutting-edge 9-1 and 6A phased array radar, boasting a staggering 600-kilometer detection range, they caught a faint thermal whisper against the cold sky. In 7 seconds, the target was locked. From a silo near Smolensk, a 7.7 and 6-1 interceptor roared to life. Accelerating to Mach 14, it ripped through the thin upper air and met the bomber head-on at an altitude of 40 kilometers. The 150-kilogram fragmentation warhead exploded with surgical precision, tearing the B-2 apart mid-flight. On the ground, witnesses described it as if a second sun had erupted overhead, a blinding flash, a rolling fireball. Shards of burning debris rained down across a 6-mile radius, setting forests ablaze and rattling windows 20 miles away. This was more than just the loss of hardware, it was a global message. American stealth, for decades untouchable, had been pierced. News outlets replayed the footage of flaming wreckage over and over. The image burned into the world's memory. At the Pentagon, the reality was sobering. A single S-500 battery had done what the entire Soviet military failed to do in the Cold War. The era of absolute U.S. air dominance had been challenged, and America's answer would be overwhelming. Inside the Pentagon, red lights pulsed on secure communication panels. The Joint Chiefs made their stance clear. This was not just an attack on an aircraft, it was an attack on America's credibility. The response would have to be decisive, devastating, and unforgettable. By nightfall, the USS Gerald R, the most advanced aircraft carrier in history, was slicing through the Baltic Sea at 30 knots. Displacing over 100,000 tons, she was escorted by 4 Ticonderoga-class cruisers and 6 Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers, together carrying more than 500 ship-launched Tomahawk and SM-6 missiles, over 75 stealth aircraft, F-35C Lightning E's and F-A-18 Super Hornets, roared from her deck, forming a steel swarm over the sea. From the skies above Missouri came an even grimmer omen for B-21 Raider stealth bombers. Each carried GBU-57A, the massive ordnance penetrators minus 30,000-pound bunker-busting giants capable of drilling through 200 feet of reinforced concrete. Alongside them flew swarms of AGM-158J ASSM stealth cruise missiles, gliding silently through the night, each with a range of over 600 miles. designed to slip past radar nets like shadows in the dark. In parallel, a fleet of 30 ballistic missiles sat fueled and primed, their warheads ready to hammer military sites across Russia. The downing of the B-2 had opened a door the Russians could never close. What awaited them was not a limited strike, but a display of sheer American warfighting power, a reminder, carved in fire and steel, of what it means to challenge the United States in the 21st century. The MGM-31A Pershing to ballistic missiles rolled out from concealed U.S. Army batteries scattered across Europe. Upgraded with cutting-edge hypersonic glide vehicles, each missile could travel at speeds exceeding Mach 8, crossing 1,800 kilometers in just minutes, striking targets with pinpoint precision within 3 meters. These were not merely weapons of war, they were a declaration, a chilling guarantee that no nation could defy the United States without facing devastating consequences. Satellite imagery captured the eerie, almost balletic choreography of war preparations, aircraft carrier decks bristling with armed fighters, B-21 raiders circling in tight aerial refueling patterns, and missile convoys creeping beneath thick camouflage nets as American generals convened with NATO commanders. One unambiguous directive cut across every secure channel: this would not be a token response. The mission was to dismantle Russia's air defense shield, the same S-500 network that had shocked the world only hours earlier by shooting down a U.S. stealth bomber. Around the globe, millions watched in suspense. For decades, America's military reach had been the stuff of legend. Now it would be demonstrated once again, not through speeches or diplomacy, but through sheer, unrestrained force unleashed. Without hesitation, at precisely 2:03 a.m. Moscow time, the night sky over western Russia erupted into a spectacle of terrifying brilliance. The first wave surged from the dark waters of the Baltic Sea, where 6 U.S. Navy destroyers and cruisers launched a blistering salvo of 58 Tomahawk cruise missiles. One after another, the weapons streaked away, leaving molten trails of flame across the decks before skimming low over the water. Flying at treetop height to 600 miles per hour, they slashed through forests and river valleys, guided by topographical maps burned into their onboard navigation systems. Russian spotters reported thin, ghostly contrails moments before shockwaves. Obliterated outposts, then came the heavy bombers. From high above Belarus, for B-2 Spirits and for B-1 raiders broke radio silence. Their bomb bays opened wide, each releasing a pair of 30,000-pound GBU-57AB bunker busters. The massive ordnance fell silently at first, accelerating toward the frozen ground at near supersonic speed. They penetrated deep before detonating. In colossal subterranean explosions, the earth convulsed, hurling towers of fire, soil, and shattered rock hundreds of feet into the air. Seismic sensors in Poland registered the detonations as small earthquakes. From afar, it seemed as if colossal. Spears of molten steel had been driven into the Russian heartland. Then, the night split open once more. 30 Pershing to ballistic missiles, long hidden in Poland's dense forests, roared toward the edge of space. Their exhaust plumes blazed so brightly they outshone the moon. At their highest point, advanced guidance systems shifted their trajectory downward. The warheads re-entered the atmosphere at more than 10,000 miles per hour, cloaked in incandescent plasma cones visible from the ground. Russian radar screens flooded with hypersonic returns, operators staring in disbelief. A calm, final transmission cut across U.S. communications, rain inbound. Targets locked, God bless the Republic. Moments later, the night ignited with strobing flashes, each one followed by a bone-rattling roar rolling for miles across the plains. Above the chaos, the B-21s banked in perfect formation, their whispering engines already plotting the next incursion. For those watching, it appeared as though the sky itself had been set ablaze, a storm of steel executed with surgical precision, shaking the very earth beneath it. As the American offensive closed in, Russia's air defense network roared. To life, sirens wailed. Inside fortified bunkers, officers barked rapid-fire orders, their glowing radar screens swarming with enemy trajectories. In the forests near Kuga and Smolensk, S-400 and S-500 launchers swung skyward, crews frantically loading interceptors. Then the counterattack began. Over 120 surface-to-air missiles screamed from their tubes in rapid succession, each leaving a burning column of exhaust in the dark sky. The air above became a violent fireworks display, brilliant arcs of Russian interceptors racing to meet the incoming Pershings and Tomahawks. High above, explosions blossomed like shattered stars, as hypersonic weapons met their killers in midair. From the ground, it looked as if entire constellations were being ripped from the heavens. Anti-air batteries near Bryansk unleashed salvo after salvo, determined to stem the steel rain descending upon them. The Panzer SM cannons roared like metallic thunder, spitting thousands of shells per minute into the black void, their tracers clawing desperately at the night sky in search of low-flying tomahawks. A few found their targets' warheads blooming in midair, scattering the forests below with burning debris. But for every one that exploded, radar operators saw too many others still racing inward, their blips glowing like fireflies of doom. Radio channels crackled with tense, clipped voices, panicked updates, failed intercept calls, coordinates shouted over one another. One Russian colonel, red-faced with fury and dread, slammed his fist against the radar console when a cluster of American missiles slid past the outer ring entirely, cutting straight for high-value targets deep inside the defense perimeter. Above them, MiG-31 pilots clawed for altitude, scrambling to intercept incoming bombers. But as their radars lit up, they were drowned in a blizzard of electronic jamming. Screens went blank, target locks broke, and the frustrated interceptors were forced to break off. The confusion below was absolute. At one S-400 battery, spotters swore the ground shook not from impacts yet, but from the shockwave of dozens of missile launches erupting at once. It was as if the Earth itself had joined the fight. For the Russians, the night was an endless chorus of steel and fire, the sky streaked with incandescent trails, each one a spear of death. Hardened commanders, men who had stared down decades of war games, admitted they had never faced anything like it. They could feel it in their bones. The strike was punching through, unstoppable, like a tidal wave of precision-guided wrath. And when it hit the ground, there would be hell to pay. Dawn over western Russia revealed the nightmare in full. Smoke hung low over a landscape ripped open by violent miles of smoking craters, twisted wreckage, and shattered hangars. In Smolensk, once a cornerstone of Russia's western defenses, satellite images counted 7 separate impact sites, each gouging the earth into craters over 100 feet across. Nearby, a massive fuel depot had been turned into a roaring inferno by a direct Pershing to strike. A pillar of greasy black smoke climbed 3,000 feet into the air, visible from villages 40 miles away. In Kuga, the primary air base was annihilated. Bunker-busting bombs tore through reinforced concrete like paper, collapsing entire underground hangars onto the aircraft within. On the surface, charred hulks of Su-35s and Su-57s lay scattered like broken toys, canopies blown out, wings sheared away. Analysts later confirmed at least 23 high-value fighters destroyed before they could even taxi to the runway. The human cost was even more staggering. Early Russian reports, first downplayed, then reluctantly confirmed by independent monitors, spoke of over 3,000 military personnel killed or wounded in a single night. Some units near Kuga lost half their combat strength before their soldiers could even reach an alarm station. Barracks were obliterated without warning. Commanders scrambled to re-establish communication from mobile vans hidden along forest roads. But with so many radar stations and command nodes pulverized, coordination dissolved into chaos. In some sectors, officers were forced to send runners with hand radios, powerless to repel another wave should it come. By midday, emergency convoys clogged the highways heading east, carrying the wounded and the dazed survivors. Overhead, drone footage captured grim scenes. Fields littered with the skeletal remains of SAM launchers, radar arrays still faintly smoking, and rows of shallow graves dug in haste by surviving conscripts. For decades, Moscow had boasted of its impenetrable multi-layer air defenses. Overnight, those claims lay buried under rubble and twisted steel, the Kremlin's most advanced. Systems had been tested and found catastrophically wanting against the sheer mass and speed of an American all-out strike. It was a demonstration of modern warfare's brutal efficiency and, for the watching world, a sobering warning: challenge U.S. air supremacy, and your heartland could pay in blood and fire before the sun rises again. When the morning wind finally pushed the smoke eastward, the truth stood carved into Russian soil. In the age of precision-guided war, there is no safe refuge not under a bunker, not behind the proudest defenses. In less than 24 hours, thousands were dead. Billions of dollars in military hardware lay in smoking ruin. And the myth of untouchable fortresses had been shattered under a steel rain from the American arsenal. Across living rooms in Florida, Montana, and every corner of the United States, veterans watched the footage with grim familiarity. This wasn't just news, it was a reminder of lessons paid